Is it idealistic to try to keep rents low when everything else is going up?
I think it's essential to keep rents low, particularly because everything else is going up. Part of the problem is the salaries aren't going up. So lots of the people who live in East Palo Alto, who do the day-to-day labor of making sure the peninsula keeps running, who are on limited incomes and fixed incomes, their incomes aren't going up, and we need a place for those folks to stay.
Well, I can imagine property owners, and Page Mill Properties in particular, which owns most of the rental units in East Palo Alto, would say they have a right to make a profit. And how can they make a profit if rents are kept low while everything else is going up? Their costs would be going up, their employees' salaries would be going up, the cost of business is going up. Well,
under East Palo Alto's ordinance and the state law, they can charge incoming tenants any amount they choose. So for tenants who are moving into their apartments, to Page Mill Properties apartments, and in fact to any apartments in East Palo Alto, they can charge the market rent. They can charge $1,500, $2,000, $800, whatever they can get. What East Palo Alto's ordinance says, though, is that once that initial rent level is set, that essentially becomes like the base rent, and any adjustments to that rent have to come from that initial rent. What that does is it stabilizes the rent for the individual tenants, which is essential for people to be able to plan their lives.
Now, Jeannie said, William and Ovier, that they can charge whatever it is that they want. And once they charge it, that becomes the base rent. Now, are we talking about right now they're charging whatever they want, or the fact of what's been charged, what the tenants are currently paying being the base rent?
Well, for new tenants, Page Mill Properties and other landlords are entitled under state law, specifically the Costa-Hawkins Rental Housing Act of 1995, to charge whatever the market will bear. And there's no dispute about the Page Mill's right or any other landlord's right whose units are in the rent stabilization program to charge whatever they can find a willing tenant willing to pay. The problem relates to people who began their tenancies in the past, who, according to our interpretation, under state law, are entitled to rents that are stabilized based upon the rents that they were paying when they began their tenancies even years ago.
Well, wouldn't the current increases that Page Mill Properties brought, wouldn't those be based on the current rents that the tenants, long-standing tenants, are currently paying?
They're not, and that's what I think goes to the crux of the problem. The problem is, and that's why there's a lot of controversy that's brewing right now, is how to interpret East Palo Alto's rent stabilization ordinance, which was passed in the mid-'80s, together with the state law, the Costa-Hawkins law that William was referring to. I think that looking at those two together, there are basically three constraints on a landlord's ability to increase the rent to increase the rent of any tenant. One is the initial rent. Now this is technical, so you can stop me whenever you want, but before the Costa-Hawkins law was passed, there were three constraints. One was that the rent couldn't be more than the rent in, what was the year, 1986?
April 1st, 1985 was the original base year rent established for all units in the rent stabilization program.
And that was the base rent at the time. And then the landlord could take that base rent and add on what's called the annual general adjustment, which is basically an adjustment 3%. For inflation. Some years it would be 3%. This year it was 3.2%. Some years it's 7%. Some years it's 2%. It's all based on the inflation rate of rental housing in the Bay Area.